Back in July of 2025, this year, we made a trip from southeast Kansas, Pittsburg, Kansas, all the way to Maine. We took our 2017 Chevy Bolt. And, a person might ask, why in the world would a person do that? Is that a good idea? Well, the answer is, I wouldn't say no, it's a good idea, but we did it just to see if it was possible, if we could actually make the trip. And so that's why we did it. We made a 3,500-mile round trip, driving all the way to Maine and back home. You could see that we paid over $500 in all of our charging fees. And if we were going to, try to compute how does that compare to, let's say, a good fuel economy hybrid vehicle, it would be substantially less. And of course, the hybrid would not have near as long charging time to charge. The Chevy Bolt is not an interstate vehicle. It charges very slow. It doesn't have what I would say a very long range. And it's just not the right car of choice to make this type of trip. But can it be done? The answer is yes, because we did it. So this just shows an example of one screenshot that I took on our Bolt. So on our vehicle, our Bolt, if you don't charge all the way up every time you charge, it just keeps adding, the amount of kilowatt hours that you've used to the amount of miles you've used. And once you've fully charged either to the hilltop, because we have a hilltop feature, or fully charged 100% state of charge, then this starts over. And so this shows another screenshot that we made. I put all of this data into a spreadsheet so that I could compute just what was the total amount of energy that we used on the trip, 834 kilowatt hours, and these were the amount of miles we traveled. So if you divide that out, you'd see that we averaged 4.2 miles per kilowatt hour, which is a very good fuel economy for an EV. So where did we go? We went to Niagara Falls, and that was probably one of the highlights of the trip. We really enjoyed Niagara Falls. We actually took our passports with us because we thought, well, there's a chance we'll cross the border there, and that's what we did. That's how you can get a better screenshot, a better photo of the actual falls if you walk over to the Canadian side. This shows an example of people that are riding, the boat out there next to the falls. And I have a couple more pictures here in a minute I'll show. What's another interesting point of the trip? Well, one night we stayed, I think it was in Providence, Rhode Island. Interesting, they had two level 2 AC chargers there. When we woke up the next morning, there was a Chevy Silverado EV that was charging right next to our Bolt, a very large vehicle right next to this real small vehicle. Only two chargers in this small parking lot. Anyways, when we woke up the next day, I told my wife, hey, we're pretty close to the New England Patriots Stadium, and our son and our daughter-in-law are huge New England Patriot fans. And I thought, well, why don't we just drive by, because it seemed like, it was on the way as we were going to Maine. It's only 25 minutes away or so. Let's go to the stadium. And I thought I Googled, whether or not a person could try to get into the stadium. And anyway, so we got out of the vehicle and we went up and talked to some folks that were there. And they mentioned something I'd never heard of before while we were there. And they mentioned Coldplay. And I didn't even know what it was. And lo and behold, that evening was when Coldplay was playing at Gillette Stadium that had that kiss cam viral incident that occurred. And so we were there that morning taking a photo of the stadium on our way to Maine. Little did we know that night that would kind of rock the world in terms of the kiss cam on the Coldplay concert. So this shows a photo of the time we went out on a beach in Maine, and I'll piggyback to the Niagara Falls here in a second. This location in Maine was really nice. We stopped at some little place where you could actually get a level 2 AC charge. It was kind of a little bit off the beaten path. It was only like $12 for parking, and you walked away, and it was nice to be able to get out on the beach there. So this just shows another screenshot of Niagara Falls, which is really nice view that we had. Another picture. This, I think, was on the U.S. side here. This was the Canadian side, U.S. side. This is a panoramic view that we took when we were in Maine, just the coastline, and here's a lighthouse that we had as well, lighthouse photo. So during the trip, what did I learn during the trip? First of all, Chevy Bolts are known to have very bad seats. Everybody complains about them. And I have a 2001 F-150, a 2007 F-150, and when I drive those trucks, let's say 450 miles, my back hurts. And surprisingly, on this 3,500-mile trip, you would think that it would have just ruined my back, and it was actually perfect during the whole trip. And so, only thing I can think of is that the seat is so small that it forced good posture to where I just did not have any back problems during the 3,500-mile trip. And that was a little bit of a risk and a little bit of a concern of mine. I'm probably close 6'1", 200 pounds, so you'd think, it's not a seat for my size or whatever. And my wife, she likes the seat, doesn't think it's any problem, but I was expecting that the seat would be very bad on my back, and it wasn't at all. Another thing I learned, charging just is not cheap. If you're DC fast charging on road trips, it's just what I'd say not economical compared to today's fuel prices for gasoline, especially if you have a hybrid vehicle that's getting really good fuel economy. After making this trip, I've learned that it is wise if you can always find a hotel that has a good level 2 AC charger. And a lot of the hotel staff really just don't understand it. Like on our trips to Dallas, I've talked to multiple hotel staff. One time I called and said, hey, I want to talk to you about your EV charging. They said, what? And I said, your electric vehicle charging. And on another trip there, or on the first trip there, I was asking about the card that was needed to be able to plug in, and they didn't know. So there are still hotels out there that really just don't even know anything about their own electric vehicle charging. But if you get to a hotel, it does have an EV charger. That is a way it can charge all the way up to 100% state of charge overnight. Because if you're DC fast charging on a road trip, you're not going to charge 100% state of charge. As the vehicle gets closer and closer to 100% state of charge, it dramatically slows down, and nobody's going to take the time just to sit there and wait and twiddle your thumb until you get to 100% state of charge. Whereas if you park at a hotel and plug it in overnight, then you can get to 100% state of charge in this Chevy Bolt, and then you can have a longer leg on your first leg of the trip the next day. And that is definitely worth the trouble to find a hotel that has it. Now, some hotels, it might actually be free to be able to charge there. There was one place, I don't remember if it was in Kentucky, West Virginia, and I think we had to put in some Blink app, and it was like 45 cents per kilowatt hour, which, we're used to paying 50 to 60 cents per kilowatt hour on DC fast charging, but that was clearly the highest level 2 AC charging price I'd ever paid. But it allowed us to get 100% state of charge, and plus there probably were not a lot of other choices based on where we were. And we charged in lots of different types of locations, using lots of different apps. I mean, we were charging at one time, I don't know, in the middle of West Virginia somewhere in a lightning storm at a Tesla supercharger, right? And so we went off the beaten path multiple times to charge, and it was twice we actually, the DC fast charging stopped on us. And so I'll talk a little bit more about some of those DC fast charging challenges in a second. We did travel in nearly 100%, nearly perfect climate conditions. It was not too hot, not too cold. And so that very much helped our actual travel in terms of our range. If we were going to attempt to make another very long interstate trip through multiple states in a very cold climate, it could be a disaster. It could be very, very challenging due to the limited range. And so that I'm not sure I would want to attempt that. So in the future, I guess if I was going to buy another EV, and I think our future cars will be another EV, I really prefer in the future that the next EV has at least a 350-mile range. Our car It might have a 250 to 260 range, but probably the longest leg we've ever driven it is 220 miles. And it's not that you couldn't drive it more in those circumstances, but it is based on the availability of chargers. And our car is very slow on its DC fast charging. At best, it's 50 kilowatts, and that's if it's completely drained. As you get closer and closer to 100% state of charge, it dramatically slows to, just a crawling pace. And it's just very, very slow. So if we had a vehicle that had a 350 mile range that charges, 150, 200, or 300 kilowatts speed, that would be much, much better. I do like the ChargePoint fast charging and Tesla fast charging. And so, I wouldn't mind having a Tesla in the future because not all Tesla superchargers will allow non-Teslas to charge. And some of them have short cords that are really only designed just for Tesla. And so that would be very, very nice if we had a 350 mile range Tesla. It would just make interstate long travel nothing to talk about, honestly. There'd be nothing to share about it because it's fairly straightforward, simple, and very reliable in that case. There are other DC locations that are not super reliable. So you'll hear people say that, electric vehicles themselves are very reliable, even more reliable than internal combustion engine vehicles. That I think is true, but when it comes to DC fast charging on trips, it can be very challenging and frustrating, and I would think there are a lot of folks that may not really appreciate it. We were in the middle of New York somewhere in the dark. We were charging at some truck stop, and a trucker went by, and it was late, and he walked by, and it's still kind of an anomaly for people to see vehicles charging at DC fast chargers. And he asked, "Hey, how long does it take to charge this?" I said, "Well, it's going to be at least an hour. We've charged way over an hour before DC fast charging." And I don't know if he asked, "Well, how much farther do you have?" And I said, "Oh, we have hundreds of miles to go." And he just thought that was the craziest thing on earth to see somebody charging for that long and have a lot more miles to go. And obviously, a 2017 Chevy Bolt trip from Kansas to Maine is not really, probably in some people's eyes, a very wise decision. This shows an example of some of the apps on a particular screen on my phone that I have related to our Bolt. The CarPlay is just for an actual scan tool, but most of these others are related to electric vehicles, such as PlugShare, where to find something, or planning your trip. But I prefer, if I had a preference, I like charging at ChargePoint and Tesla. We've used nearly every one of these. My Chevrolet app we don't use to charge, but we've used the Walmart app. I think it was Blink that was quite frustrating for us in the middle of somewhere where, we had put money on the card, I thought. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was frustrating to have to do, because you go to the gas station, you don't have to put $20 on a card first, nor use a gas station. And so if I could pick my preferences based on all these different places that I've used to charge before, it's not that some of these others haven't been okay for us and we like them, but I really like charging at the Tesla locations, and I really like ChargePoint. We use ChargePoint at our house for the level 2 charger as well. I guess lastly, you could say, just what states have you actually had your Bolt in? Besides going all the way to Maine and back in July, since then we've made 2 trips to Dallas, and we've had it in Arkansas as well. And so to date, in the 2 years we've owned it, we bought it 2 years ago in October, so we're not quite to the 2-year mark. We've put over 42,000 miles, close to 42,000 miles on it. And so far, we've had it to 19 states. And again, if this was a Tesla, there's really nothing to talk about here, just because it's so straightforward. There are so many Tesla superchargers to go. They have such a long range. It charges so fast that there's just really nothing to discuss. But if you have a Chevy Bolt, it only has about 250-mile range at best. And, of course, you're traveling in a decent climate, and you're going very, very slow, then it's going to take a long time to charge. And so that means we're going slow. So if you think about some of these states we traveled, from Kansas to Maine, I mean, we weren't going the speed limit. You know, everybody, if the speed limit's 75, they want you to go 80. And so if you're doing anything less than 75 in the 75-mile-an-hour speed limit, you know, you stick out like a sore thumb. And of all these states that we've traveled in going below the speed limit, I got to tell you, Ohio, those folks hate your stinking guts. They do not like anybody driving anything below the speed limit. And so we had multiple people that were very disappointed that we weren't going the minimums. They think of the speed limit as the minimum speed, not the speed limit. And so that was quite an interesting thing. Whereas, you know, all these other states we've traveled in, nobody else has ever given us any grief in that case. So, and of course, if you want to get the most range, you definitely need to go slower than the maximum speed limit. Otherwise, your range just dramatically falls apart. So I'll call this good for now until we make it to another state.